First hand of the stream for us, we see a button raised to $20, folds to me in the big blind, and I have King Jack offsuit. I go ahead and make it $80. Considering it folded to him, I think he could have a lot of random cards here just trying to take down the blinds. But when he makes the call, still not done with the hand quite yet, he could still be defending pretty wide. The flop comes down ace, queen, 8 rainbow. So we have a gut shot, but generally a pretty good board for us considering we put in the last raise before the cards came out. I decide to bet a third of the pot. I bet $55 and he makes the call. Still not too worried. I think he could be defending pretty wide. He could have like 7-8 suited, 8-9 suited, queen 10 offsuit, those kind of hands. When the turn comes in offsuit ace, now the full rainbow on board, kind of a tricky card because now he's probably more likely to defend or call another street with a queen or maybe even an 8. But with that being said, I think I could still probably get away with one more bet. The question is, how big do I want to go? And I actually think I made a mistake here. I decided to bet the size of the pot. I bet $300. The reason I say this is a mistake is because if he has an ace, he's just not folding. And if he has a queen, he's probably still continuing. So the only hands I'm trying to fold out are like an 8, maybe pocket 9s, pocket 10s, but I could probably be doing that with a smaller bet as well. So when I bet $300 and he decides to make the call, I'm almost always putting him on an ace here, or maybe sometimes a queen. The point being is that we are beat and we need a 10. Praying to hit one of our 4 outs, and would you believe it, the river comes a 10. So we go ahead and hit our gut shot here on the river. We only have a little bit more than a pot size bet, and with our hands so disguised, I think the only play here is all in. Sure, we'll get beat by ace 8, ace queen, ace 10, pocket 8s, but we can still get value by so much worse. So I go all in, and he snap calls. And unfortunately for us, he shows ace 8 suited. Fortunately, we lose 1,500 right when the game starts, but luckily I'm with my friends who always have my back, right? No, Justin decides to laugh in my face when I lose my first buy-in, but it's only fair because if he did the same, I'd probably be laughing too. On to the next one. In this next hand, we see a under the gun raise to 25. We see Justin make the call, and I'm over here in late position. I have king 7 suited. Not the best hand, but I got a lot of chips in front of me, and I'm trying to make some back, so I make it $110. Folds around to Justin, and he decides to make the call. We go heads up to a flop, which comes 7-4-6 rainbow. So we go ahead and flop top pair, but this board is definitely going to be better for him than it is for me. It's really hard for me to have a really strong hand on this board, as he can have many of the sets and 2 pairs. So when he checks it over to me, I'm going to be sneaky and check this one back. By doing so, we can also now bluff catch on a lot of turns, as our hand is under-repped. The turn now is the king of spades, so we bink a 2 pair, and it also puts a backdoor flush draw on the board. So now, if he has a hand such as 6-4 suited, 7-6 suited, we now beat those hands. We obviously still lose to sets and straights, but if he has those hands, so be it. Justin decides to lead out for $125, so he bets half pot. Now is the question whether we want to just call or if we want to put in another raise. By just calling, if he is bluffing, he can continue to bluff. But if we put in a raise, I think we can still get value from a lot of other hands, such as, once again, worst 2 pairs, or combo draws, such as pair and flush draw, pair and straight draw. He might even have like a pair, a flush draw, and a straight draw. There's just a lot of hands we can get value from. So I'm leaning a little bit more towards raising. I decide to make it $375, and after I make this bet, Justin now decides to go all in. So this is obviously not the best spot in the world, as it is around $900 more to call. But with that being said, we still do beat a lot of hands that I think he could be doing this with, such as 7-6 suited, 6-4 suited, combo draws. So I'm not in love with the spot, but I think after checking back the flop, I just have to put the money in here. So I make the call, and he does not look happy, which is great news to us. So in my mind, I'm hoping to fade probably an 8, a 3, or a spade. And luckily for us, it comes the ace of diamonds. So a pretty good river, and sure enough, he says we are good. Well, Justin, it looks like I'm the one getting the last laugh. In this next hand, we're playing 2-5-10, and we see an early position limp. I'm on the button with ace 6 suited. I make it 35, and the limper decides to call. 9-10-6 board is certainly going to be better for him, but we go ahead and flop a pair and a backdoor flush draw. He checks it to me, and I decide to check back. The turn now is the ace of diamonds, so we go ahead and hit a pretty disguised 2-pair. I'm having flashbacks of the last hand with king 7 as we go ahead and check back the flop, and we get led into when we turn 2-pair. Against this player though, when he leads for 50, also just to switch it up, you don't want to be doing the same thing every single time. I just decide to make the call. Therefore, once again, you guys already know, we can bluff catch a lot of the rivers, and also we can pot control at some frequency. The river now is the 7 of spades, so not the best river, as now any 8 beats us. Now he decides to lead out for $100. So putting in a raise just isn't an option anymore. We still beat a lot of the missed flush draws, queen jack, but this time he flops top set. So what ended up looking like a bad river actually probably saved us around $400 to $500. Nice hand. In this next hand, we see a button straddle from Justin. I'm in the small blind with 2 9s, easy open to 35, folds to him, and now he makes it $80. For that size and how deep we are, I think we have a pretty standard call. The flop comes down a6-8 with 2 hearts. So not the best board in the world. I check it over to him. He bets 45, and for that sizing, I think I have to peel at least 1. We don't have any hearts in our hand, so it's a little bit more likely that he could have a flush draw. We see the 6 of diamonds here on the turn. I check it once again, and this time he bets $125. So surely it's not looking like a bluff at this point, but once again, we still are ahead of a lot of the flush draws, and also he could have some random hands such as like Jack 10 suited that just fires another bullet. So I decide to see one more card, praying that the river goes check check unless we hit a 9. The river now is the 7 of spades. So pretty much a brick. We do block 9-10, but very unlikely that we would be continuing on 2 streets with a gut shot. So once again, praying it goes check check. Sure enough, that's what happens, and we win against king 10 of hearts. So maybe not a good call in the long run, but this time it does decide to work out. In this next hand, our brilliant friend TJ decides to put on the $80 straddle. So this is a 2, 5, 10, 20, 40, 80. Justin in the cutoff decides to open up to 275. I have around 3K in my stack, I believe. And I look down at 2 queens. So with the $80 straddle on, we are just absolutely never folding this hand pre-flop, even if it's for all of my chips. Justin could be doing this pretty wide, so I decide to make it $650. Obviously praying that he goes all in. Folds back around to him, and after some thought, he does decide to go all in. I make the snap call, and we're up against ace-king. Much rather have seen jacks or 10s, but nonetheless, we do have a flip with a lot of dead money in the middle. Praying that we see a queen in the window, but unfortunately, the first 3 cards comes out king, king, jack. So we are in pretty miserable shape. The turn comes a 10, so it looks like we're open-ended, but an ace is not an out. We need to hit a 9 or a queen, but unfortunately for us, the river is a total brick. So in this hand, we're going to be losing $2,000, all because my lovely friend TJ put on the $80 straddle. Thanks, TJ. In this next hand, we see Justin open up the action to $25. I'm directly to his left, and I make it $75 with queen 10 offsuit. Folds back around to him, and he makes the call. The flop comes down 2-5-5 with 2 diamonds. We do not have a diamond in our hand. When he checks over to me, I'm just going to be betting small here, praying that we can see some big cards to barrel on, or we can just hit one of our outs. I make it $50, and he decides to just make the call. The turn now is an amazing card. It is a 10. So we go ahead and hit top pair with a pretty good kicker. Justin checks it over to me once again. I think he's likely to be weighted towards a middling pair here, or maybe some sort of draw, such as 6, 7s, 8s, 9s, or maybe even a flush draw, such as 7, 8 suited, 9, 10 suited. We can get value from a whole bunch of hands. So against someone who I've probably played more poker with than anyone else, I decided to bet big on this card because I still would be having some double barrels here with king, queen, ace, king, etc. I bet $250, thinking that he probably would call with, once again, draws, pair plus draw, maybe just a middling pair. I bet $250, and I'm happy to see him just make the call. The river now isn't the best card. It is an offsuit jack. So if he had hands such as queen jack suited, jack 9 suited, and those kind of hands that floated with a flush draw, now hit a pair that beats ours. So when he checks it over to me, now's the question whether we want to go for another street of value or just take a pair of 10s to showdown. It's actually pretty close because once again, we can still get value from a lot of middling pairs, I think, and the flush draw bricked out, so I think he might be able to look me up a little bit lighter. But on the other hand, if he had a flush draw himself, he's likely not going to be calling another bet. So I decided to take the cheap showdown and check it back. And to my surprise, we have the same exact hand, Queen 10. But Justin, he goes ahead and flops a flush draw and turns a pair, so we were actually in pretty bad shape. In this next hand, we see Justin open up an early position to 25. I have two 10s directly to his left, and I decided to just make the call, play it a little sneaky. Now we see a player in late position who hasn't got out of line a whole lot, makes it 100. We see a call out of the small blind, Justin folds, and I decide to tag along. The 4-5-6 flop gives us an overpair, but once again, we're still losing to hands such as aces, kings, queens, jacks, those kind of hands. So when it checks over to the initial aggressor who bets $200, the small blind folds, and with an overpair in my hand a little bit under-repped, I think I have to make a call once again. The turn now is the 5 of diamonds, so a pretty good card. Really doesn't change a whole lot though. I check it over to him, and now he decides to check it back. Feeling much better about my pair of 10s. The river comes the 9 of hearts. We still have an overpair here, but I don't see a whole lot of value in betting here. There's not too many hands that we can get called by that we beat. So I decided to check it. He bets 300 and not in love with it, but I think we have a pretty easy call. But unfortunately this time he has pocket queens. So kind of a cooler on this board, especially the one time I decided to flat Justin preflop. Just made the dynamic of the hand a lot more difficult than it should have been. Probably should have just raised Justin myself, but you know, it is what it is.
And Harry B, yeah, a little bit of a tough night for him.
In this next one, we're down piles now, around $2,000. Justin does the under the gun straddle. I'm in early position with King Jack offsuit. I make it 35. We see TJ make the call behind me, and Justin decides to defend his straddle. We're off to see a flop, which is pretty good. It comes down 6-4-4 with 2 hearts. This board is generally going to be better for me with all my overpairs. And there's a lot of good turns to barrel on, such as any heart, or we can just hit a king or a jack. I decide to bet $35, and we see TJ call. The turn now is probably the best card in the deck. It is the king of hearts. So we hit our top pair, but we also turned a flush draw as well. I decided to bet $110, so around 2/3 the size of the pot. But unfortunately, he just floated with 7 deuce. So he has absolutely nothing and decides to fold. We see another straddle in this next hand, except this time it is on the button. We see a newer player in early position raise it up to 40. I'm in the cutoff with king queen suited. Pretty good hand. We both have a lot of chips in front of us. I make it $125. This time he does decide to make the call. We're off to see a flop, which brings no help whatsoever. It is 7-4-10 with 2 clubs and 1 spade. We have 2 overs and some backdoor draws. I decide to bet $100, and he decides to make the call. Praying we see a good turn card in a king, queen, spade, jack, ace, any of those cards, but unfortunately the turn is the 5 of diamonds, so just no help whatsoever. When he checks, at this point, I see no point in betting. I don't think a 10's folding. I don't think jacks are folding. Even like 2 pairs, combo draws, they're just not folding. So I check it back, and we see a jack of diamonds here on the river. Now he leads out for $400, and I snap fold. In this next hand, I am down piles of money, so I put on the button straddle to 10. The small blind decides to raise it up to $55. We see 2 calls, folds to me, and I look down at 7 deuce of diamonds. Yes, I know, you guys are already rolling your eyes, and you already know what I'm about to do, and you are correct. I decided to make it $300, obviously praying for folds, but unfortunately we ran into some big hands. The small blind goes all in, the big blind calls for around $1,000, and obviously if I knew their exact hands at the time, I would have called because they have each other's outs, but obviously in the time, it just sucks. So we decided to fold, and we punt $300. Yes, this is the definition of a punt. In this next hand, we are still down piles of money, so I put on the button straddle once again. We see a call by the player in the small blind. TJ, who is under the gun, he makes it $50. I'm on the button with 6-7 suited. I go ahead and make it $150. To my surprise, both of them decide to make the call. So we're praying that we see some cards that will help us. The flop comes 10, 5, 6 with 2 spades and 1 club. So we go ahead and flop middle pair with a backdoor straight draw and a backdoor flush draw. Checks to me, and this time I decide to check it back. The turn is the 2 of clubs, so a really good card. We go ahead and pick up a flush draw. It checks over to TJ, and now he bets $250. Action's on me, and obviously we are not folding. We have a pair and a flush draw, and we're still ahead of a lot of hands such as spades. So when he does bet $250, I think we have a pretty easy call. The river now is the 9 of clubs, so we go ahead and hit our backdoor flush. Now action's on TJ, but unfortunately he decides to check. Obviously praying that he bet, but now is a question of what sizing we want to choose. With a little bit more than a pot size bet behind, I think I just want to go for it all. Also, I'm down on the stream, everyone knows this, so I am probably the one that's most likely to just lose their mind at the end of the night. So I decided to go all in, and unfortunately TJ pretty quickly folds as he flopped a flush draw. I'm actually surprised he didn't bet this river, but good for him, he lost the minimum. Unfortunately, best bet didn't put the ending stats on the screen, but if I had to take a guess, I think I lost around $3,500 or so. $3,000 to $3,500. So anyways, we got cooked, but as always guys, I hope you enjoyed the stream.